Okay, here we are for a really quick tutorial about armored warfare and how armor kind of works on a tank. Because this is an example of a tank here. This square, a rectangle. So most people when they think about tanks, at least know that the front armor is the thickest. So they tend to present the front armor towards the enemy, which is the right thing to do. But I just want to go into a bit of the geometry here and try to explain why that's not always the best thing to do. How you need to angle it towards the enemy. So first of all, we'll look at a piece of armor. So let's say this blue line here represents a thin piece of armor, and the shell is traveling this way. Oops, wrong color. The shell is traveling this way towards the armor, like this, like that. All right. So a flat piece of armor like that will stop a shell if it's thick enough. But what we're really looking for here is how much armor is being presented. So I'll give you a better example. So let's say the shell comes and the shell impacts here, like that, head on to the front plate. Ping. All right, you hear a big ping sound. The shell has struck the armor. Now, the distance the shell has to travel through the armor is represented by that black line. Okay? It's basically calculated by exactly the thickness of the armor. And if we come up here to this sloped armor, now on the front of tanks, most modern tanks, starting about the second half of World War II, say 1942, this became the standard. There were a few tanks that had this figured out earlier, but late 41, 42, this really becomes apparent that this is what needs to be done. Let me show you the difference. So the shell's traveling towards the armor. Whoops. Now, it's a little pixelated, so it's hard to see. But if we look at the lower model here, we can see the shell travels roughly that far. On the upper model, the curved, or the sloped armor gives us a much longer line. It's almost 30% longer. We can grab that one below. Oops. And bring it up here, just to show. See? So there's the armor below, and there's the line above. So just by sloping the armor without changing the thickness, tank designers were able to increase the protection of the vehicles by 30%. So what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that tank design changed at the beginning of World War II, throughout the war. But we can also use this to our advantage in any armored vehicle that we're in command of. Because, so this, we'll look at this box. This box represents a tank. The front armor, of course, is the thickest. That's what you want to present to the enemy. So we'll look at what a head-on shot looks like. So this is a top-down view. The other views were like a cutaway. This is a top-down view of the tank. This is the front of the tank. This is the back of the tank. These are the sides. We'll put like the gun, so make sure there's no misunderstandings. There's the turret, okay, and here's the gun. All right, so top-down view of the tank. So our shell comes screaming towards the tank. Whoops. Need to select the line. the shell comes screaming towards the tank like this. Bang! And hits straight on into the front armor. Alright? So the shell then has to travel that far. But if you turn your tank so that the enemy is firing at you from an angle, you angle your tank and you take the corner of your tank and nudge it over so it's pointing towards the enemy. Instead of presenting your tank straight on, you present it at an angle, then the shell's coming like this. Bang! And you're drastically increasing your armor. You're giving yourself a 30% buff to what you'd normally have out of the box. So you always want to angle your tank, and the more you angle it, the more protection you're going to have. Let's say you take a shot like this. Whoops. Let's say the shot comes like that, all right, and hits you there. Look at this. Look at all of that armor that it has to get through. Now this sloping, this angling can also cause the shell to bounce. If the shell's coming in at an angle like this, I don't know who would take this shot. Not only do you have a crazy amount of armor protection, like this. You know, we're talking in feet of armor now instead of centimeters. But there's a good chance that shell's just going to bounce off. All right? So that's why angling yourself is so important. Now, so you might be thinking, just in case, if you want the shells to bounce, why don't you angle your tank more? There are diminishing returns here, because if you look at the side armor, I have another model over here. I'm not going to draw the turret on this one. The more you angle the armor, the more of your side armor here that you present. And of course your side armor is very thin. So if your side armor takes, if you're angling say 15 degrees toward the enemy, and your side armor takes a hit like that, right? You still have quite a bit of protection. But we're already at the point of diminishing returns here. What you want is something like, this is hard to do, something like this, right? So that even so, you know, there's a good foot of armor there. And your front armor is see? At this angle, and this isn't perfect, but at this angle, the front and the side armor have about the same effective thickness. And that's what we're looking for. You want to angle your tank so that your front armor and your side armor have roughly the same effective thickness, even though the side armor is much thinner than the front armor. And that's really the big secret in armored warfare, at least the fundamental secret. Now, what have we learned from this that we can use against the enemy? We've learned that when we're shooting at the enemy, we want to aim for flat parts like this. So when you're looking for weak points, you're looking for on German tanks and Russian KV tanks, you're looking for the cheeks of the turret. So the turret, we'll say the turret Let's see if I can use this tool. The turret looks something like this. Okay. Ah! This is tricky. Alright, this is a front view of the turret. The gun would be right here, pointing at us, so we're looking down the gun right now. And there's a gun mantlet, like this. Right? And just to make sure that you're with me, like here would be the hatch. So where are the weak points here? And then here's the body of the tank. Now the body of the tank, we'll say for argument's sake, has sloped armor. And it's angled. Well, you can't really angle the turret because the turret needs to present the gun towards you. So where are you going to aim? So say that this body is angled. What we're looking for in terms of a weak spot here are flat parts. Like this. That will always be flat when he's pointing his gun at you. This will be flat when he's pointing his gun at you. If you're close enough, by all means, aim for the hatch. Hitting the hatch will cause, say you hit the hatch right here, it's going to cause spalling down into the crew compartment. So imagine these yellow lines being little pieces of shrapnel. So you're going to hit that. Some of the energy, not all of it, but some of that energy is going to be directed downwards into the crew compartment. Okay? And if all else fails, you can't penetrate here. Let's say his armor's too thick here, his armor's too thick here. You can't see the hatch. He's angled well, so everything's deflecting and bouncing. There's always one place you can go for. Right here. Hit the cannon. The cannon is at most a centimeter or two thick. At most. A hit to the cannon will put him out of action. Okay? And that's really it. You know, scan the hull. Look for flat parts like this on the hull, visually, quickly. And if you can't find any, aim for the turret cheeks, because that's going to take out everyone in the turret. Say you've got a gunner, a loader, a commander in the turret, you've just taken out 60% of the tank's crew. Right? Or at least made them much less combat effective. The hull is almost never where you want to put a shot, unless you know the tank that you're firing at, and you know you can penetrate it. Okay? If it's angled, don't even try, unless you know you can do it. So that's the end of the lesson for today. We'll get into more complex theory later on, once these skills have had time to develop.